I do have one other point. So a lot of the times you say that women are a lot more emotional than men are, but if you were to look at how many men are in prison versus how many women are in prison, there's way more men in prison. So wouldn't that suggest that men are much more irrational and make impulsive decisions based off of emotion?
No.
Well, you also got to keep in mind that men serve 66% more jail time than women do. But yeah, I mean, men tend to be more violent than women.
Right. So if men are more violent, that means they're basing their decisions off of impulses coming from emotions.
Not necessarily all the time, bro. A lot of it is premeditated murder, bro.
But you're going off of like the entire population, right? So that means all women are not in jail either. So they're outside doing their thing, but they're still emotional. Not true?
and committing crime isn't necessarily the only being emotional.
So I mean, what's the argument here? Because
it just so happens when men are emotional, there tends to be violent outcomes, which leads to prison time. But that does not necessarily mean that men in general are more emotional than women. It just means that what you're just using the metric of, okay, men are in prison because so that means they're more emotional. But you got to remember that there's ways to be emotional without necessarily having the bottom line become prison.
And also, let's say the scenario is a man and woman gets pulled over and they're both drunk. He could say, "Oh man, you know, I'm trying to get home, bro. I messed up." He's going to jail. She says, "Oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." She's going home. It's like the woman's always going to get lesser time or no time at all.
Yeah, using the criminal justice system isn't the best barometer to assess female and male emotional levels. So I guess you can make an argument that it's a component, but it's not the best way to gauge.
It may not be the best way to gauge emotional judgment, but it is a good way to judge irrationality. And if you guys argue that men are much more logical than women are, but if you're a logical person, you'll be able to understand how to stay out of jail.
Well, I mean, a lot of guys, right, that are in prison are there for, crimes that aren't necessarily violent. It's crimes that are involve making money through nefarious ways, whether it's scamming, fraud, selling drugs, etc.
Yeah.
These aren't necessarily emotionally driven crimes. They're if you actually think about it, they're very logically sound ways to make money when they have limited opportunities, right? Like if you're a convicted felon, right? The reason why the recidivism rate is so high in the United States is because when you're a convicted felon, you can't necessarily find a job. So they find other ways to make money, even though it might be through nefarious means. Now, I'm not excusing it. Don't get it twisted. I'm not excusing it, but I think it's actually a very logically sound way to make money, given the fact that they have limited opportunities to earn income. So I don't think the criminal justice system argument is a valid way to assess female and male emotion levels, because women show emotion all the time, and it might not necessarily bottom line into jail time.
And I could also argue, just to counter your point, all the women that are on meds because of their emotional status, that could also be an argument too. But once again, I don't know. So I mean, I get what you're saying, bro, but
yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, I mean, but bro, women are definitely more emotional than men, man. Come on, dude. Let's be honest here. Like, is that really? Are you really going to make this argument?
But I do think that men they're much more irrational because, I mean, if you just look at the statistics, it's in the statistics. They make irrational decisions.
You said men do?
Yes.
Well, that's because you're using the metric of prison and jail to assess that, but there's a bunch of irrational things that women do too that you can't necessarily capture through statistics.
That is true.
You know what I'm saying?
What's the argument here, bro?
Yeah, I mean, bro, if we're gonna have this a discussion, I think it's pretty damn factual at this point that women are absolutely more emotionally driven than men are.
I think so too, but I mean, I don't think it's as like majority women are like 80% more emotional than men are. I think it's much more closer than we think. That's basically what my argument is. I think it's much more like maybe 60-40 to say so.
I mean, we can debate the nuances, but I'm saying in general, women are far more emotional than men are. Are there women out there that are capable of, logically sound arguments and everything else? Sure. But in general, they're not. And I mean, if you look at, the way the world was built, etc., if women were so rationally sound and logical, we'd have more female inventors. We'd have more female, geniuses, but we don't. Women tend to hover in the average, the average median parts of the bell curve.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
All right, man. Well, it was a good discussion. Like I said before, we could agree and disagree on some points, but as far as like female emotion and women chasing careers over family, I mean, I think you misinterpreted what we said on the first part. But what we say is like, hey, she could get a job and everything, but she's got to understand that once she does get a man, that comes first, and priorities have to shift. So, who's up next?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an endless conversation. I just don't think women would ever agree with something like that.
They won't, and I agree with you that they won't. But the thing is that they got to accept reality, and that's why I tell them these things, because no one else is going to tell them. And to be honest, they're not going to listen anyway. But it's mostly for the audience to see that even in the face of fact, women don't like the truth. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
It was good talking to you guys.
No worries, man.
Cool, man.
Who's up next?
Shout out to you.